As strong personalities and effective campaign strategies dominate the headlines, have we lost sight of the important elements to an effective runner? How about the time when it was all about the policies and charisma of the leader of the party? I mean, I think back to like Barack Obama, who had arguably the best charisma ever in a U.S. president. And now, like, charisma for who just won? Yeah. I don't really see, there's not a lot of charisma there. I mean, he's good in some areas, but publicly, I mean, a lot of people would disagree. But when we look at that, one of the questions that sparked for me was, what are some of the practical ways, I guess, we can keep equity in understanding their policies, but then also looking at them as an individual? Like, how do we find a balance and an equitable solution going forward for who to vote for?
And that's the thing. I feel like we're very divided in the sense, even amongst people within their own parties and their own beliefs, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, where it's like, do you vote based on the actual personality and the character of the person, or do you vote on this policy and it's backed up by quantifiable factual data?
But how do we, like, because like when no, go ahead, because when campaigns make videos, right?
Right. So it becomes more about the people doing the campaign videos as well. But when it comes to actual framework, I think policy first, right? Because people can be replaced.
People don't care about policy.
But people are replaced and policies are not. It's something that people have to understand.
Right, but if people don't, but hold on. If people don't care about policy, then why, as a runner, if you want to win and create effective policy, why would you use policy as a way to promote yourself when you know that emotional strings are what matters?
I think that's what happened to our own, like, polity. So if you see right now, we have that division because when you have a political identity, it's starting to become your own identity. I see this now in the past decade. Before, a liberal and conservative could sit together and talk about and be very civil, whereas now
it feels personal.
Very personal.
It feels personal.
Yeah. It's interesting. The best way to find a mutual agreement is to have a mutual enemy. So when we build that mutual enemy in politics, it actually works for your campaign strategy.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean you like that person that you're voting for. It just means that you don't like the other person. So part of their strategy is to just make you hate the other person.
But also, people aren't really accountable when it comes to knowing policies because they really don't care.
So how do we change that? Should media just eradicate any sort of political drama and just start talking about policy?
No, I don't.
Because then they lose viewership. Yep. People really don't care about it.
Yep.
I think it's the way you disseminate these policies. Because a lot of the policies that are coming out, a lot of people don't understand it. They only want to understand what they want to see, right? So a lot of the time they will disseminate their own, and then that's how disinformation happens.
I see.
So I think if we have the right platforms, individuals could disseminate those policies to educate and show awareness of what it actually means, fact-checking. But nowadays, we use social media and say, oh, this is true.
Well, it's funny, too, because even Donald Trump, before the election, came out and said that he didn't really appreciate, well, not really, but he totally didn't appreciate how Fox News actually was not super pro-Trump before the election. He said that they weren't pro-Trump enough. And it's like when you hear a political leader say that, that really does influence the way that somebody views the media, and how his expectation was that the media would just support the one side because the other side supports that side. Like, that's such a big disconnect. I guess one of my biggest questions, and we have about a minute and a half left, would be regulation around how social media actually influences these decisions. TV is a little bit more, regulated, but social media isn't. Do we have to start coming up with ways around politics so that we can start regulating more policy-based discussions?
If you start that for one thing, it extends to other topics. Exactly. So if it's politics, it could be.
But we're swinging so far the other way anyways. Like, it's becoming so divisive. Why not just teeter-totter it a little bit back with some regulations?
Because it's hard enough, because I feel like the web or social media, there is no owner of the web.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, if you look at the international realm, who is going to be that sole person to have that person accountable?
Or, for example, something that happened last year in Canada, Bill C-18. So I was in Europe. It didn't happen to me, but I was sending Instagram reels to my friends, and they told me they couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And for a second, I'm like, what do you mean? Because I didn't know it was actually into effect. But that's an example.
Do you think that it does matter following the drama of each political leader?
No, not at all.
Following, yes. Giving into it, no. Giving into it, it's a choice. But following, I'd say at least be aware.
At least be aware.
As a citizen. As a citizen, at least be aware.
But at the end of the day, I feel like there's a gray space where you're going to be aware, but then you're going to fall into that rabbit hole and you don't know how far you're going.
Okay, we'll leave it there. There's a little bit of a hug.
I'ma rule the world.